Hi folks, this is Jay. Hope you're okay today. It's good to see you. I just want to share with you about the crisis of secularism just for a moment. Secularism is in crisis, and the reason why it's in crisis is because it doesn't really know where it's going. Right? It doesn't really know where it's taking us in our democratic societies. When you don't know where you're going, you're guaranteed to end in disaster. Alright? Now, I can tell you what's going to happen in the next 10 years in our Western democracies, in America and in European democracies. And this is what's going to happen. These secularists are going to keep pushing gay rights, and they're going to have gay marriage accepted everywhere throughout all European democracies and in America, right? And their new ethics that they want to bring in and bring into our Western democracies will bring moral collapse. This is already happening now. The foundations and fault lines of collapse are already there. Even ordinary people who are not religious, both in America and in the UK, know there's something deeply wrong. They know there's something very, very deeply wrong, and they know that their countries are on the tipping edge. They know this, okay? And what's going to happen with these secularists, especially the elite leaders, are going to continue to push their failed agenda. When they do that, they'll hand over a collapse. There will be a moral collapse in Britain. We already saw the riots in Britain not so long ago. We've already seen the American government in Britain, the riots in Britain, which was a little sign that things are not all right in the UK. In America, the government, law enforcement departments have ordered, not so long ago, a few weeks ago, 400 and odd million extra rounds of ammunition because they're preparing for future social upheaval. Okay, so this is not what I'm saying is people are already seeing it. Government departments in America, even ordinary people in the UK know there's something deeply wrong. Alright, but these crazy secularists with their crazy elitist moral agenda are still going to go forward with it. They're interested in fame, money and power. They're not interested in the ordinary people, so they're going to push for it. And what they're doing, what will happen is, and what is happening already, is they leave a moral vacuum. Once you start to have gay marriage, once you start to say anything's permitted, whatever, you leave a moral vacuum. There's no moral standards there within that nation anymore. Okay? And where there's a vacuum, it will collapse. And that's what's going to happen. We're seeing it in the banking system. It's already collapsing in Europe. It's collapsing before our very eyes, and it will take the rest of the capitalist agenda down with it. We've seen it in the politicians, the corrupt politicians in America, the corrupt politicians in the UK and in Europe. They're all corrupt. So in the banking system, in the political system, in the business system, it's all corrupt. Even in our sports, there's corruption at a deep and endemic level. And it's all there for everybody to see. Now you can cover over the cracks, but the secularists aren't going to are doing that. But they're not sorting out the foundations. They're not sorting out the problem. So what happens then? So you've got this moral vacuum. They'll push for these promiscuous moral agendas. Euthanasia will come in, etc. They'll push for all this. The moral vacuum's there. The collapse, right? That'll happen in the next couple of years. Nations that were full nations will have split. For example, Scotland will succeed and leave the United Kingdom. You know, you might even get a state in America leaving leaving America and setting up on themselves because of just the disunity within the nation. Okay, so as the moral vacuum collapses, nations will start to break up. The European Union will break up, etc. What will happen with the vacuum? Who will fill it? I'll tell you who will fill it. there'll be a resurgence of Islam in Europe and in America. Islam will have a resurgence and will begin to take political control and will begin to assert itself politically in Europe and in America and take control of political power. But that will cause division, because they'll be making cities like Birmingham, Manchester, cities in America, they'll be declaring them under Sharia law and as Islamic states, and that'll cause military upheaval. Alright, because some people won't agree with that, and there'll be military clashes. That's what's going to happen in the next 10 years. The moral vacuum of Europe and America will bring moral collapse, and this project of this liberal elitist moral agenda will fail, and it will leave a moral vacuum, and there'll be a collapse. And the only people strong enough politically to be able to fill that vacuum will be Islam, and they will resurge, and they will begin to flex their political muscle and power, and they will begin to take control. They will bring divide and rule within nations. They will claim Islamic statehood for a city or a town, like happened in Russia with Chechnya, and that will cause military military warfare, because some will disagree with that and say, well, no, this city is part of our nation, it's not under Islamic law, etc. And it will cause division and more fracture and more wars and more divisions in society. That's where we're headed in the next 10 years. This secular elitist agenda is nowhere near strong enough to take on Islam. Islam is far, far stronger. And what about the church? Well, the church in the West, because of an affluent society, because of affluence, has become muted. There'll be only, in proportion to the nation, there'll only be a small minority of radical evangelical Christians, and they'll be meeting in houses. They'll be meeting in house churches in America, and house churches in England, and house churches around Europe. They will not be meeting in the main buildings. There'll be a small minority of committed people who really committed to the Christian faith. The rest of the churches will be captured by affluence and the state way of thinking. They will capitulate to gay marriage. They'll be doing gay marriages in the Church of England. They'll be doing gay marriages in the Episcopalian churches in America, and main denominations. The main denominations will capitulate to whatever the liberal elite are trying to get the nations to do. So the only way forward is for people to wake up and realize in the next 10 years secularism is in a crisis now. We're in a crisis, and the only way forward is for our nations to realize the only hope is to fall back at a strong position, and that is to fall back to Christianity. Is for our politicians, writers and philosophers and thinkers to have a resurgence of Christianity within the nations. What that will do, it will give moral fibre and moral strength to our democracies, so we will not collapse morally, there will be no vacuum, and that will maintain true and vibrant democracy. But at the moment, the liberal agenda, they're muting Christianity, they're destroying the Christian voice, pushing it out of public space, muting it, while they're going on with their liberal elitist agenda. And what they're doing is, it's the blind leading the blind. Alright? The blind elite secularist leading the blind. And in the end, it's going to end in catastrophe, and it's already beginning to unfold before our very eyes. That is what I think is happening at the moment. And the only hope is for everybody to realise the writings on the wall for Western democracies, unless she returns back to her first love, Jesus Christ. Unless she repents, unless she turns back to Jesus Christ, in the next 10 years, there'll be cities in America and cities in the UK under Sharia law, and they will be not democracies, but they will be theocracies, and there'll be conflict within our nations, military conflict, sad to say. I don't want this. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with military violence or anything like that. I'm not advocating anything like that. I'm just saying that's what's going to happen, because the liberal elite have not got the moral capacity, the morality, the strength in morality to give a nation its ability to maintain freedom. Promiscuousness breeds anarchy, okay, and that's what's going to happen. And because you're destroying the church, you're destroying the voice of the church, and many in the church are just accepting what the society is saying and becoming liberal. The true church will have to go underground in the West, and when she goes underground, she'll be meeting in house churches, she'll be being persecuted, will be being put in prison, while there's chaos on the streets and there's anarchy, and the people that will step in the place will be Islam, because Islam will be the only strongest force internationally and nationally that can stamp some kind of authority in that moral chaos. But when they do that, that will lead to theocracy, where we won't have any freedom, and it'll lead to military conflict, because some people won't be happy with that. But at the end of the day, Islam will get its way, because it's far stronger than secularism, and the church has become too weak to be able to make a spiritual stand in the West. So we gotta, when I was on an Outward Bound course, 2 groups of people, we went in the mountains and we had to put tents up, 12 people here, 12 people there, and it was black, it was dark, the storms, clouds had come and it was raining, and you could see flood waters coming down the mountains, and it was pitch black at night, and one group was crying and moaning saying we can't get our tent up, and another group got their tent up and they got into their tent. And that's a picture for us. When the storm clouds are gathering, we've got to put our tent up. We've got to not look at the problems. We've got to put our tent up. We've got to start preaching the gospel, doing mission now while we've got the chance. Do the work now. Preach the gospel now. Get out and do the work now. Preach and share the word of God out now while we have the freedom now, because we won't have the freedom in the next few years, okay? Let's get preaching now. Let's get sharing the gospel. Let's get Bibles out in the schools and colleges and universities. Let's get doing mission work and doing it now. Reach out to Muslims, reach out to the secularists, but let's get preaching the gospel, serving the Lord, doing what we can. Do it now, because we won't have the freedom in the next few years, okay? That's my message to you. Nehemiah, when the walls were broken, he built the walls. As the walls are crumbling in the West now, as secularism is in crisis, and it's all crumbling, we've got to build the walls. What are the walls? The Word of God. We've got to be teaching the Word of God in the schools and colleges, universities, Sunday school. We've got to be teaching the Word of God in our communities. Build the walls. And maybe, if God blesses us, we can avoid the catastrophe that's going to come upon us in the next few years. The moral collapse that's coming to Britain, coming to the United States, it's coming to the rest of Europe, and it's coming soon, folks, if we don't start to build the walls and do what Nehemiah did and start working for Jesus and preaching the gospel and teaching the word of God and spreading out literature and books and Bibles and CDs and DVDs about Jesus everywhere, and prayer, back it up with powerful prayer. We don't start, folks. The collapse is coming, and don't you blame anybody but yourself if you have to meet in your home and not in church, because the persecution has spread in our democracies. And don't start crying when Islam takes over the nations, because you were warned today. You need to get working for Jesus today while we have time, okay? And before the collapse comes. That's what I think, folks. You might think I'm crazy, but some people see this, what I see. Zizek and others, European intellectuals, see it. Even many politicians are seeing the collapse is already coming. Alright, so get ready and preach the gospel while we can. Non-violence, we don't believe in violence. Our mission is about Jesus and preaching the gospel. So preach the gospel while we have time, and do it with all your might. God bless you and take care.